full gear. Yes, technically we've already had 2 games under our belts in Japan, Cubs versus Dodgers, where the Cubs basically blew 2 games. But the real season for everybody starts tomorrow. I'm super excited. I've just got a few minutes to hang out with you and wanted to share a little bit about the things that I am most looking forward to in the season coming up. Hi, everybody. My name is Craig. Welcome to MetropoliFins. We are YouTube's smallest New York Mets and Miami Dolphins channel. I want to tell you a few things that I'm excited about. Number one, regarding the Mets, we got to start with the Mets because we are a Mets channel. I am a Mets fan. What am I most excited about? I am excited about seeing how this team reacts to being both a high payroll team that a lot of people still are doubting. Um, I understand that the Mets need to go out and prove things on the field this year. There is no doubt in my mind that this team cannot afford to get off to as lousy of a start this year as they did last year. However, I'm absolutely astounded by the number of people that I see legitimately thinking that this is a third place in the NL East team. There is just simply no way that I would come to that conclusion. There is certainly a lot that you could pick on regarding the starting pitching staff if you're looking at this team from an outsider. But if you are simply looking at this team and how it has been strategically put together, you'll realize that the pitching staff that we have this year is equal, if not superior to, the pitching staff that we had last year. And I understand that people want to see big names, and yet at the same time, one of the biggest things that you'll hear people pick on the New York Mets for is that they spent all that money on the big names of Scherzer and Verlander, and it didn't work out for them. So it really kind of leads to that question of, well, what do you really want to see? The Mets have made this change from going after every single big name on the market, throwing a ton of money because they used to be a great fit for a team, to instead trying to strategically put together a deep team that is well balanced and then spiking in huge free agent signings when it is worthwhile and when the risk seems to be well worth the payoff. And so they reward some homegrown talent in names like Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso that they're willing to sign, and then they work on either long-term contracts for players from other organizations that they think are going to pay out over the long haul, such as Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. And despite the fact that there have been many detractors of Francisco Lindor, there is zero doubt that the Mets got the ultimate end out of that deal. As great as Andre Jimenez is shaping up to be defensively, I think the Mets are there. And so I just find it interesting, and I want to see how this team is going to react, if there's going to be kind of a nice big chip on their shoulder. Christopher, how's it going? Go Yankees, go Mets. Let's go Mets, baby. Jonathan, bubble wrap the Mets. So, yeah, I agree, Jonathan. There's seems to still be this tentative reaction to David Stearns that he doesn't know what he's doing. And basically, what we're learning the further we get past this is that the magic in Milwaukee was not Craig Counsell being Milwaukee's manager. It was David Stearns putting together the ultimate small market, finding diamond in the rough team. And so now he's taking that skill, but he also has the ability, and the Mets as a team have the ability to still spend huge on major free agent acquisitions that make sense for the team in the long run. And I think this just puts a whole bunch of everything in perspective. And so I'm trying to figure out what exactly the critics would have wanted the Mets to do regarding their pitching staff this year. Because let's say the Mets had gone out and signed 1 or 2 really big name pitcher free agents on top of Soto in the first place. And then let's say instead of Montas and Minaya that got hurt, let's say it was those 2 big free agent pitching stars who got hurt. And then the Mets end up going into this season, sure, with this same depth of a pitching rotation, but with their top 2, free agent pitcher signings out for 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks, who knows how long. They'd be all over the Mets for doing that, and they'd be, why are you spending that much money on pitching that can easily get hurt? So the strategy that the Mets are playing is, I think it's the much wiser strategy to do. It is still risky. Anytime you sign a player, it's risky, right? I mean, Look at Rendon's contract. Like that contract ended up being risky and not really worth it ultimately in the end. And so there is some form of a risk, but ultimately there. All right, so outside, that's what I want to see for the Mets. I want to see how the Mets can react despite kind of being the biggest free agent signer of this offseason, that they're still not really even considered a favorite in the NL East by most anybody, other than maybe, Mets homers like myself. And I just find that kind of interesting. I think that's based more off of history as opposed to present. And there might be a little bit of arbitrage and a pick there that's available for you. What I'm most looking forward to outside of the New York Mets for this season is the hopeful continuing emergence of more young stars taking over the game. I think that we have seen a massive delay in development thanks to the lost season of 2020. And I think it has probably hurt baseball maybe more than any other sport, simply because it's one of those sports that you just can't practice anywhere near as well by yourself as you can, in a situation where you're on the field competing against other teams. So, and what I mean by this is I'm not saying that practice and gameplay is not valuable for other sports, but a basketball player can continue to shoot hoops. Like that whole season, that 2020 season that was lost, basketball players could continue pickup games and could continue to shoot hoops and rent out gyms and do that. Football players could continue, how's it going, Bubba? Twinsies! Football players could continue to run blocking drills and they could continue to pass footballs to each other and work on their timing and do all that. But there's just something about live game action that baseball players need for their ultimate development that so many players lost in 2020. And I feel like the game is finally getting rebirthed after all of that. Now you're to the point where almost all these guys who wanted to, at least, have been able to complete 4 years of college post their high school season, and I feel like things have kind of picked up. I feel even, and this maybe sounds crazy, but even on the local levels, in watching like youth baseball and the little snippets of local JV and high school, it just seems like the level of baseball is just getting better. And so I want to see Elly De La Cruz take the next step up in his game. I want to see if Paul Skeens can continue to dominate. In fact, it's taken me the entire offseason to realize how impressive what Skeens did as a rookie pitcher was last year, really was, because I was trying to think about it. I'm like, man, it's really been a long time since I remember a rookie pitcher coming through and truly dominating, really kind of the DeGrom era. It's been a while. And so I'm just very excited to see that. I'm excited to see if the Orioles can fully blossom into a top-level contending team with all of their young talent that they've really built over a series of years. I think there's so many even potentially guys who haven't fully lived up to all the hype who could maybe take that next step forward, like O'Neal Cruz. I believe you could see him blossom. There's just, I'm ready to see that. Plus, there's the next wave of all these rookies, Jacob Wilson, and there's so many others here, Jason Dominguez. And again, I'm not saying it as a fan of the Mets here. This is just me as a baseball fan. I believe the game of baseball is best when two things are true at the same time. When there is a bunch of young talent coming up and when the old talent thrives. So if there's going to be one third area that I would love to see this year, and this one, again, you can hate me if you want, but if I could have my dream season, I would love to see Jacob deGrom dominant once again as a pitcher this season. I would like to see vintage Jacob deGrom. I feel for him. I understand why it just simply was not going to work for him to come back to the Mets. And, from a Mets fan perspective, it was the right move. But as a fan of Jacob deGrom, I would love to see him come back and bounce back in a way that is just exceedingly beyond really what anyone is expecting this year. Not just like, hey, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good number 3 starter. I would love to see a dominant Jacob deGrom. And I think having like a dominant Jacob deGrom and seeing maybe Scherzer and Kershaw all putting up really good years, combined with this new crop of younger stars, as well as a bunch of people in between. I guess another star I would love to see have a huge bounce back season is Mike Trout. So I'm just rooting and cheering because I think baseball is better that way. I recently watched some highlights from what I believe was the '94 All-Star game. I think it was the All-Star game right before the strike. And I remember seeing that and seeing like, wow, it was such a great collection because it was the stars of that era, but then there was also the guys who were blooming into stardom at that same time too, who are going to be dominating. And I feel like we're on the verge of this kind of, it's time to cycle through, right? It's time to, over the next couple of years, time to say goodbye to some of the absolute best of what we've seen over the last 15 years. You know, the Kershaws, the Scherzers, the DeGroms, they're all nearing the end of their career, and it's time for this torch to be passed to this next round of stuff. And even on the Mets, it's coming to the end of the era for Starling Marte with this team, but it's time for Vientos to come in and maybe Beatty to bloom and different things. And I think a lot of teams are just kind of seeing this turnover right now. Fire Game, we're just talking baseball here, just on the eve of the start of the Major League Baseball season. So I'm going to put together my predictions video tonight, so be looking for that. I'm going to have some hot takes that probably people will mock, but I'm still going to, I'll lay it out, and you're getting a little bit of a taste of that. So, but the thing, Jonathan, is DeGrom's arm is worth more than gold, but his arm is only worth it if he's actually out there pitching on a regular basis too. So I can dream, right? Like, this is the great thing about baseball in the spring is you can dream, you can hope, you can see, hey, there's a chance for things to go. So yeah, so that's about it. I just figured, hey, I'm going to try to do this a little bit more, even in between just talking, sharing about my thoughts. And so we're going to be covering Major League Baseball. So my one ask for everybody today is, if you're enjoying this, if you love baseball, if you love all sports, but specifically if you love baseball going into this baseball season, hit that like, hit that subscribe, help us grow, help our reach get out to more and more people. We want to be a family-friendly sports channel, right? So we can have some fun, can have our little rivalries between each other, but we just want to talk baseball and talk the love of the game, talk the strategy of the game, talk the stats of the game, and just see, because baseball is transitioning, and I do think it is time for a new set of stars to step up, and it's time over the next 2 or 3 seasons to say goodbye to some of our favorites as well. So with that in mind, my family is here, so I gotta go. Oh yeah, let's go Mets, baby. Thanks, Nick, for tuning in.